folks, and welcome back to the Skill of the Month Club. This video is on garden planning. We're going to talk about things to do before you ever put a seed in the ground in order to have the most efficient and satisfying garden experience. We're in the month of planning and preparedness right now, but this material may also be relevant later on when we talk gardening in earnest a little bit later in our Skill of the Month Club year. The winter time is the perfect time for garden planning. If you wait until the spring, you're a little late. If you wait until the summer, you're busy. But also, the winter time is great for garden planning because we need to be able to think about and fantasize about great summer things when the winter is drear and cold. Sometimes the seed catalog is just the one thing that gets you through from Christmas until March. Of course, I'm speaking to you from Idaho. We're zone 4 here up in the mountains. And I know that many of you don't have the same conditions. But the basic characteristics of planning that I'm going to discuss are not dependent on what those conditions are because we're going to learn how to research your particular location. So observation, observation, observation. We're going to talk a lot about how to gather information. I'm going to start by giving you 5 buckets to research, to gather information in before you ever decide what plant should go where. First, the size and shape of your garden plot. Go ahead and walk out there. Go ahead and take a tape measure. Get precise. There's no harm in knowing exactly where things are. You're going to want to sketch this out. Don't worry, you don't have to be artistic. I am not at all. My sketches are the opposite of artistic, but I have a very clear idea of the basics, and I sketch it over and over again. In the course of my garden planning season, I'll sketch the same plot 8, 9, 10 times. And I internalize the shape of that. It becomes something that I understand, that I have memorized. Now, in my garden plan, I also mark in where the fence line is. Fences are really important where I live because we're in elk country. So anything that's not behind the fence is food for the elk. No shame in that, but it sure can be discouraging. I don't recommend it. I also sketch in the location of buildings, of trees, bushes, or other perennials, things that are going to be there, the paths where people walk, and then a few other things we'll get to. But start with just the size and shape of your garden plot. You may have to make a decision about how much you're going to cultivate in a particular year. Go easy on yourself. Don't do anything crazy. Cultivate an amount of space that you know you can handle. And if it turns out to be something manageable, then you can always do more next year. The second bucket we're going to look at is your climate, your local climate. Now this is really important, especially if you're someone who is interested in homesteading and you follow people on YouTube. It's very tempting to just do what they do. But that can put you not just days, but months off of your true season. You need to do the research about your actual location. What is your hardiness zone? That comes in a number and a letter, -4C, for there 3 to 8 usually. The 3 being colder and 8 being warmer. That's going to be a code. Different plants are going to be labeled by their hardiness zone, where they're able to thrive, in what kind of climate zone they're able to thrive. You also need to know your first and last frost dates. These are figures that you need to have memorized, you need to have off the top of your head. They're not precise in the sense that it doesn't always the ground doesn't stop freezing on the same day every spring, and it doesn't start freezing in the same day every fall. But your first and last frost dates are estimates that can give you an idea of how much of a growing season you have for plants that can't survive a frost. You want to do the math to find out how many days there are between that last frost date in the spring, ours is early May, and the first frost date in the fall, ours is September. How many frost-free days do you have in between? You should have that figure ready in a hat for looking at the back of a seed packet or understanding a perennial plant and knowing whether or not it will thrive in your specific conditions. If you have a neighbor who gardens, it's worthwhile making friends with them for specific climate information. They can tell you that it tends to rain for a month in May and then go dry all the way through the rest of the summer. Or they can tell you that there's usually a hard freeze and then the snow doesn't come until November. That kind of information is really important And those kinds of friendships are really important too. If someone does help you out, be sure to give them some potted starts or some of your canned goods in order to say thank you. And those relationships can be valuable both directions and really flourish over a long time. Which brings us to our third bucket, which is sun, wind, and water. Seed packets are generally labeled by full sun, partial sun, or shade. So you want to look at your garden plot, which you already have drawn, sketched out, and measured at this point, and determine whether it is all full sun, partial sun, or shade. Full sun usually means 6 hours of direct sun all the way through the growing season. Partial sun would be 4 hours of direct sun all the way through the growing season, and shade is any less than that. Now you can't tell what your hours of sunlight are in the summer by measuring it in the winter, but you can look around and make some good guesses. Are there tall objects to the south, if you're in the northern hemisphere, to the south of your garden? If you're in the southern hemisphere, you swap that. But if you are there tall objects between the sun and your garden? If so, you have to consider the possibility that you're in shade. If you're in full sun in the wintertime, you are definitely in full sun in the summertime because that sun is going to get higher and higher. While you're looking at sun, also check out the prevailing wind. Different locations do have a direction of wind that is consistent. It's not going to be consistent every moment of every day, but it is going to be more likely, more common. That's why it's called the prevailing wind. You can do this the old-fashioned way, just lick your finger and put it up in the air and see which side gets cold first, or you can use a windsock. This is also a great thing to ask your neighbors about. You can find out which direction weather fronts come in. The reason this information is so useful is that some plants want shelter. Some plants want to be sheltered from wind, and you can use a stronger plant to shelter a weaker plant and create a microclimate for that weaker plant in order to allow it to thrive even in conditions that it might not be able to without that extra support. Also look at water. Some of us will be watering our garden with a hose. Many of us will be watering our garden with a hose. But also look at natural bodies of water and how the water moves through the dirt, how the area is sloped, whether there are any ditches or any convenient places for ditches to be able to move water. It's going to be more efficient, and you're going to be more likely to have that summer lemonade you want if you can get the water in the dirt itself. Let the ground be what carries the water rather than having to set out your sprinklers or walk around with a hose each day. So that was our third bucket. Now we're going on to our fourth bucket, which is soil analysis. Some people get intimidated at this point, but there's really no need. It's just dirt. And the more you know about the dirt, the more you're going to appreciate about your garden. Dirt is good stuff. So let's get into dirt, because the more quality soil you have, the more of a yield you're going to have. So the first thing to do is just to take the dirt up in your hands and look at it. Does it feel sandy? Does it feel sticky? Does it have a dark color or a light color? Does it have a texture to it? If it's dark and textured, it's likely to have more organic matter in it. If it's a lighter color and more fine, it's likely to have less organic matter in it. If you can make a fist with it and it sticks together in your hand, that's clay. If you make a fist and it all just filters right through, that's more likely to be sand. Go ahead and get into your journal and write this stuff down. Write it down partly to practice your own powers of observation, and partly because you're creating a baseline for what your soil was like the first year, and you're going to be able to go through the same tests next year and the year after that and chart some kind of progress or change. I also recommend a soil analysis test kit, a soil test kit, which is, you can really get that pretty easily online or at any hardware store. The ones that I have used before test mineral content and pH. pH is how you tell whether the soil is acidic or alkaline. That's on a scale of 1 to 14, where 1 is completely acidic and 14 is completely basic or alkaline, and 7 is neutral. So most plants like neutral, but some are pretty particular. Some might like it a little bit more towards the 6 end, with a little bit more acidic, and some might like it a little more alkaline or basic. And the thing that's useful about having this information, the pH or acidity level of your soil, as well as some idea of the mineral content, is for 2 reasons. One, it's going to let you know how to amend the soil. As you want to add amendments, things that will improve the soil, it's good to know which minerals you're short in or which direction you want to move in terms of acidity so you know what to add. But you also want to know what the conditions are in the soil because different plants like different things. And it's much more efficient to plant a plant in a condition it already likes than it is to plant a plant and try to change everything around it, like changing the bedroom around your picky Aunt Marge in order to give her everything she wants. It's better just to put her in the bedroom with the window in the first place. So that was bucket number 4, soil analysis, which brings us to the best. We've finally been waiting for this. The number 5 bucket is what do you want to grow? And at this point, I encourage you to just be inspired. Go ahead and look at those seed catalogs online, or if you have them in paper form. Sometimes a seed catalog is just the thing that lights up the winter. There's a lot of joy in looking at them. And ask yourself and your family, what are we passionate about growing? You can start to create some relationships between what you want to grow and what you can grow, but go ahead and give yourself that opportunity to recognize what you want. What would make you excited? Is it strawberries? Is it a lush patch of strawberries that makes your mouth water? Is it tomatoes? The memory of being out in the garden with a tomato and a salt shaker is one that's extremely motivating for me every year. That and the sugar snap peas. If I didn't have tomatoes and sugar snap peas, I don't know that I would go out and look at my garden at all. So I have to be sure and recognize which things I'm most excited about so that I can plan that in and not accidentally give myself a garden I don't want to take care of. You can also ask the question of what does your family eat? And here you can work from the direction of I'm going to grow everything my family eats right now, or I'm going to force my family to eat what I grow. In reality, there's always going to be some kind of bridge between the two, that there's going to be some relationship between growing what you eat and eating what you grow. There's got to be some kind of a bridge point between those two. But that is the 5th bucket, being able to research and think about the things that you want to grow. And those are the 5 buckets worth of research that I recommend you do before you even plan a single thing about your garden. So at this point, what I do, once I have all this information gathered, I sit down with multiple copies of my sketch or multiple fresh pieces of paper where I can repeat my garden sketch. And I go ahead and also get 1 seed packet from different varieties that I've grown before. Plus, it also helps to have a gardening book out that has kind of general ideas about what different plants like and how long their growing season is. And I start to look through. So if I have this seed packet that says it has these conditions, this thing from the book that needs these conditions, and I just start trying out what goes where. I recommend that you give yourself an entire evening for this, an entire evening for imagination and play and try out different things and go ahead and make it fun. If you come into it rushed, if you come into it fearful, you're just not going to have as good of results. It's better to really say, I'm going to go ahead for an entire evening, have my cup of tea or my cup of wine or whatever it is that works for me, and I'm going to have my work, and I'm going to engage fully in this for this evening before I lock down any decisions. And you may depending on whether you're a beginning gardener or an advanced gardener, it's different questions that you're dealing with. So if you're beginning, it's probably wise to just set out rows or blocks of different things. So this section is for my tomatoes, this section is for my sugar snap peas, this section is for my carrots. Be sure and check what conditions those different things like and try to match them to the right place on your plot. Most seed packets will give you a recommendation whether you should start the seeds indoors and plant them out after danger of frost, or if you should plant the seeds direct sow right in the ground. Now, I want to make sure that people understand that you always have those 2 options. Some plants don't do as well with being transplanted. My experience with cucumbers has always been that they're delayed at least a week after they're moved from one place to another, whereas my brassicas, the broccolis, and the cauliflowers and the cabbages tend to not mind being transplanted at all as long as the ground is firm. And there are other plants which are more or less sensitive to cold. There are some plants where you really just can't survive a single frost, so don't bother having them out there until after that frost date. There are others that are more hardy, and some that are like kale that are just fine to go right through the winter. So the people who write these seed packets are doing their best to guess what the best thing is. But they don't know you. They don't know what your conditions are. They don't know whether you have a greenhouse or not, or whether you have the ability to water these plants, these seed starts indoors or not. I have some neighbors who transplant everything, so because our season is kind of short and that helps to extend the season. But I have another neighbor in particular who doesn't like to. She puts everything in the ground, and you know what? She has a garden too. So really realizing that you have agency and also decision making to do about which seeds go directly in the ground and which seeds you start as little starts indoors and then transplant out. It's all up to you. The future is yours, and you, if you make the wrong decision, that's okay. Maybe you'll make a better decision next year. Also, a quick word to polyculture and crop rotation and succession planting. I can't possibly go over all this stuff in one video. I'm already talking so quickly, I'm nearly blue in the face. But I do want to reference all those things in garden planning in case you haven't thought to think about it. Rotation planting can actually be a great way to get organized, especially if you're starting out and you've got kind of a large amount of ground. But the idea there is that you divide your crops into maybe 4 categories, recognizing which things need which kind of soil. So you could start your rotation with tomatoes or potatoes or a combination of the two because they need heavy manure. So you start with heavy manure, and the year that you've got that, that's where your tomatoes and potatoes go in. Then you follow that with root crops. You follow that with brassicas. You follow that then with legumes, with your beans and peas, which will be nitrogen fixers and will help to restore the soil again to go through that rotation again. Now, the reason that's a helpful idea for if you're starting out with a large plot is that you're moving those 4, you're rotating through 4 plots. So you can say, okay, this quarter is going to be my legumes, this quarter is going to be my tomatoes, this quarter is going to be my brassicas, and this quarter is going to be my root crops. Although clearly that didn't include lettuces or squash, so don't oversimplify too much. Don't take it from me exactly how to organize everything. You are the only one who knows your own priorities. Also, a quick word to polyculture. Some plants like to be near each other and other plants don't. In difficult planting conditions like what we have here on our mountain, polyculture is really important. We just don't get that much yield unless we can figure out how to get the plants to help each other to thrive as well as possible. And I won't say that I've got it completely figured out by any means. I've been here for 4 years, but I've been successfully gardening for 2. So I'm not going to give a spiel about how to do that for my particular climate, but I am going to encourage you to do the research for how to do it for yours. A great source for that is permies.com. In their Growies forum, they have tons and tons of conversations about interplanting and succession planting and polyculture, and also no-till gardening. Lots of ideas for how to get the most out of what may be an imperfect gardening plot. You could say that there's no such thing as an imperfect gardening plot. All of the land is possible to cultivate if only we know how. I know I just went a mile a minute about all of that. I am going to have some printables available in the Facebook group in case you want to go through this process, especially the research part and sketching things out and making sure that you have all of your research done. What I mostly want to do is just to encourage you to enjoy yourself and to make room for your humanity in your process of garden planning, so that when you do have a garden in the summer, you will love it and not hate it. You'll have a healthy relationship with your garden, and that will be one step closer to food self-sufficiency and security and the joy of having a partnership with the land and the soil in providing your needs and the needs of others. I'm Esther Emery. This has been the Homestead Skill of the Month Club. Garden planning. As always, please contribute your thoughts below. Any clarifications that you can offer, or other resources or links, or you can also offer this stuff in the Facebook group. It's been really important for us as we're getting started out with the Skill of the Month Club to have people share different perspectives and different experiences, because not everyone has a cookie cutter homestead. There's no such thing. Again, thanks for hanging out with us. This has been the Homestead Skill of the Month Club. I'll see you next time.